how to master your music. This video is also for the people looking to invest in a mastering studio for their own personal use. That's why I did a video, and we're going to get into it right now. It's going to show the prices of the stuff, it's going to show what we're using it for, and it's going to be a brief explanation of why 75 bucks you should be jumping up and down that a guy like me is out here doing this. And you know, the more work we get, I thank God for every last person that contacts me and reaches out. We want to do 5,000-6,000 masters this year, and we want people to be happy with it, and we want people to experience this. People always ask me, even if you're not in the position to be turning out albums, maybe you're working with a client, do yourself a favor and have it mastered. And have it mastered with a studio that has equipment like this. And you know, I can't pat myself on the back, but I've been listening to music for about 16 years professionally, about 7. And it's like, man, if everybody could just get one master done, a phenomenal one, from somebody that really has a passion for this business, it would change their life. It really would. And we're going to get into this, so enjoy this. It's just a run-through screenshot of a bunch of the stuff that we purchased in the studio, and we're going to keep growing. My name is Doug Jenkins, iMixandMaster.com. I hope you enjoy this, and we'll go from there. What's going on, YouTube? This is Doug Jenkins. I'm going to explain our mastering chain to you from a business standpoint. If you want to get into starting a mastering studio, I'm going to recommend some pieces of equipment that we've bought, and we're going to go through it. This is our first stop. This is hooked up to our MacBook. It's a very powerful MacBook with 8 gigs of RAM, and it's got a solid state drive. And what it is our dump deck. So we're pushing everything out of this. So when you send us a 2-track instrumental or a 2-track final, could be up to 10 songs. What we're going to do is we're actually going to be using Pro Tools on this rig, but what's happening is when we open up WaveLab on the other computer, we use 2 computers in our mastering. One computer is going to receive the dump, and this would be the other computer, and then as we go through, we can actually look at the level, and we can see where the RMS is, and we love the levels inside WaveLab. So what we'll do is use all the hardware. I'm going to go through the hardware, and we will print your song back in using the Symphony I/O. So let's go down here so you can see what the Symphony I/O is all about. The next one, so it goes out of this and then it goes into a Symphony I/O. Ours has the 16 in, 16 out. You really don't need that many. If you could actually get away with a 2x6 if you're just mastering. But we do a lot of stem masters, so here's the one we have. This box will take the inputs. What's cool about the Symphony is we can switch the DBFS, how it's hitting 0. Within a given digital domain, there's a certain way for it to sound different, sound better. There's ways of using equipment like the massive passive we have in a balanced or unbalanced mode to give it more excitement, make it louder, bigger, punchier. We have this, but before it hits this converter, we have a whole rack of stuff that I'll go through. The first piece that we use a lot is the SSL bus compressor. For hip-hop, pop, we actually have this one here. This piece right here is an infamous compressor that we'll use, and a lot of times we'll find that a song needs a little more punch, so we might set this attack time at 0.30 or 0.10. If we feel that we don't want to be real snappy and real punchy, we might set the release over there over to the auto release, or if we want it to have a punch and a drive like a hip-hop song should, we're going to leave it at 0.1. So long attack, short release. If we just want to overall rock music or anything like that, we want to use this as our first stop, almost like a mix bus compressor, which it was intended to do, to really glue your mix together. So we do a 0.3 and an auto release. The ratios on it, really small ratios we use a lot of. If we're in a mixing, stem mixing, we may use this on the drum bus, may use it on a vocal, may use it on a guitar stem. We had a project come into the studio one time where the guitars were just way too big for the song, and we used it at 0.3 and auto release, or I think it might have been around 1 to 3. We found the perfect setting for the guitars, and it really just filled them in and let the drums come even within the song. The next piece we have comes from Manley. It's the mastering version of this, so it's this one here, and I'm not doing this as a pride thing. I'm just explaining to you what goes into a real mastering facility. This is a 4-band EQ, and what's cool about it, it works like no other. If you can see, it says boost and cut. You can either boost and cut whatever frequency you're on. The Denton knobs that they put on there allow you to recall the settings. the shelf mode, bell mode. It's really cool. It's a passive style EQ, hint the name massive passive, which when you boost 80 hertz on this, it actually decreases all the frequencies around 80 hertz. As you can see in the mastering version, the frequencies we're working with are usually frequencies you guys aren't touching. 100 hertz to 150, a lot of guys will touch that in the mix, but 47 hertz, 33 hertz, 180 hertz, 1K, 1.8K, 1.2K, 2.7K, 3.9K. These aren't really familiar frequencies. These are frequencies within frequencies that if we can get the image correct with this box, then turn it up, then your song takes on a whole new. So the other piece of Manley gear we have, hey, knock it off. She loves when I talk about Manley gear, is the variable Mu here. This acts like a 670. The 670 was used on all the Beatles albums. It was used on a lot of classic albums. But the Manley MU is probably one of my favorite go-to compressors to give life to a recording. The dual input knob right here, as you can see, blown up to the right. When you change that just 1/8 of an inch to the right, you will notice the whole entire song sounds like it has more presence. If you decrease it, it's actually, if the song had a little bit too much presence, you can decrease this and then turn the output gains to adjust accordingly. The other thing below that, you see the high pass side chain in. This will allow, especially in hip hop, rock, EDM, we want to control the things around. I think the roll off point on this is like 119 or something like that. So anything below that is not going to be squashed by the compressor. This is a limiter as well. This is very great on limiting drums. So we could use this on a drum bus, a bass line, guitar parts, or whatever. Let me get this dog. What are you barking at? Sorry, had to grab the dog real quick. You're messing my YouTube video up, buddy. So this is one of our go-to compressors in the studio. The vacuum tube sound of this is absolutely phenomenal. There's no other way to explain this. I can't imagine getting that with a plug-in. The next thing we bought in the studio is the Dangerous compressor. This compressor at first was one of those compressors you're like, what, do I really need this? And over time in the studio I realized there's a lot of times we want to control something a lot, and we want to do it without taking away from the initial mix. This box alone has saved countless masters for me. A lot of EDM stuff again, a lot of hip hop stuff, a lot of rock stuff. That's mainly what I've been doing. But I've seen sometimes where we're literally adding 7 dBs of gain reduction, and that's what the artist wanted. And you can A/B it back and forth, and you're like, wow, how transparent can you get? And I think Chris Muth designed this box, and it's absolutely incredible. They have a bass cut and a sibilance boost. The sibilance boost will boost that into the side chain. The bass cut will actually decrease the bass so it does not hit the compressor as hard. The Smart Dynamic knob, you could hear Fab talking about this, but the Smart Dynamic usually is left on in our studio because it's very good at detecting. The other cool thing that we like this box for is it has dual detection. It detects the left and right independently, therefore leaving a bigger stereo image. When you want a stereo image to sit very nicely, a lot of compressors will actually sum it to mono, do its thing, and then take it back out to stereo. This box leaves it alone, so you could actually correct a stereo image with this box alone, which is really cool. That's the mastering compression for your studio. The next thing we have, they don't even sell it on here. Yeah, I was looking at a Talkboy because some guy asked me how I got into music, and that was like my first piece of recording equipment. Pretty funny, huh? The Maselec MLA3. We can go to Vintage King, give them some props. Maselec gear is like the Rolls Royce of dynamics and EQ. This piece of equipment alone is probably one of our better purchases of the year. It's an extremely expensive multiband compressor, but what this allows you to do as we got more familiar with it is each independent threshold is an independently incredible compressor. It goes from 1 ratio to 6 to 1 ratio. A lot of times in mastering I'll find myself at 1.4 or 1.6. Sometimes in the bass, if I get a mix in from a hip hop guy mixtape, it's just like really heavy in the bass range. We'll 0.6 it. What I'll do is go over here, go to the low band where you can just listen to the low band. Now you can set the low band at 100, 200, 400, and 800. A lot of times if we just want that bass to be in your face, this is a trick. We can set that at 100. Set this at 200, set this at 1K. So between 200 and 1K, we can then put the Manley Massive in front of it, EQ from 200 to 1K, and get that smooth and you know, bright and present, whatever we want those frequencies to do. Then hit the compressor. Sometimes it's opposite. We hit the compressor, then hit the EQ. But a lot of times we'll find what bass is working. We'll go in and attack that. We'll get it sitting right with the threshold. And a lot of times I'll find myself, you know, setting a longer attack, shorter release to let the first transients come through. Sometimes I'll find there's an 808 mixed in with that kick drum, so we might have like a point, you know, like a 30 attack and a 0.4 release, or maybe a little longer release, just to smooth it out so the bass isn't way too heavy. Sometimes we'll use the massive passive and balance the low end 808 stuff with the kick drum, then do the longer attack, shorter release. Find the threshold that works right. Once you have that threshold of your bass working right, usually around -6 where the kick drum's hitting, then these things sort of, you know, just play their part and fall in place. We can listen to the mid-range now. A lot of times it's just a 1.4 ratio, maybe a 0.3 and a longer release. Just a lot of times. The high end is so variable. There's a boost mode here. What that boost does is it boosts the highs into the side chain. A lot of sibilants, a lot of shrill going on. We're going to be able to take that and control it by boosting that in, so that finds the compressor first. And I think this is one of the greatest boxes for natural sounding high end. And that is the Maselec. And how do I get off this page? The next piece of gear that we've been really focusing in on is some of the SSL dynamic stuff that we have, that I just misspelled, but we have the dynamic strips. This is a rack full of them. But when we get into some bigger stem stuff, we can actually put this on one thing. We have an EQ from SSL. We're looking at an X patch from SSL. Between the Massive, the Maselec, the Dangerous compressor, the Manley Mu, and the SSL bus compressor being fed out of the Antelope Zodiac through this nice gear back into a session is an absolute phenomenal way of mastering music. So when we talk about mastering, we have the JBL LSR 6328 speakers. We have this pair of speakers. I love this. I wouldn't trade them for the world. They just have such a bottom end, movie style bottom end, where you can really see what the bottom end's doing. And then we bought some Focal Solo 6 for the smaller room we're in. They just work well. These two monitors have been a blessing to our studio because they are that smaller reference, but they still have a nice low end. The high end comes out like no other speaker I've ever heard, and it's just an imaged sound. You know, these two speakers alone, we were looking at getting the Focal Twin. A lot of studios are using these. A little bit different, a little more low end we got going on there. Still smaller woofers that we're actually really big fans of. We have the Oratones that I don't do much with, just not my thing. But this is our mastering rig. So between everything, when you get a master back, you're going to realize real quick that you're looking at, you know, 30-40 grand worth of a signal chain, and that's what it is.